of praise and blame, gain and loss, sickness and health. One Lama who was thrown in prison for 25 years in Tibet by the Chinese Communist Army wrote a letter out where he bowed and he thanked them in advance for their generosity in providing food, such as it was, lodging, and the advanced practices necessary for the fulfillment of his bodhisattva path of compassion. Thank you for what you're going to offer to me. And he knew he would be tortured. He knew he would be hungry. But this was the practices that would fulfill his heart's desire to be a Buddha. Or a hospice worker who was a friend of mine, who was working with an old Latino man who had AIDS, and was dying from it. And at some point, they were praying together and talking, and the conversation came around to why did he think he had AIDS? Was they led a bad life, or he was the victim of what had happened to him, or he was guilty, all the kind of stories. And the man reflected for a little while. He said, I've been thinking about this, and my understanding is that I have this disease so that I could have more time to think about Jesus. That was his answer. And he went back to his prayers. What do we do with the circumstances that are given to us? Because they are the place of bondage or of liberation. As my teacher Buddhadasa said, it is here now. If you seek Nirvana, it is no other place than in this moment, in the eternal present. How are we using our life? The questions we ask in the end are very simple ones. When you really look back over a whole life, did I awaken? Did I honor this life? Did I love well? What else really matters? Now, if we reflect on wise understanding, we can also reflect on what areas, what parts of our life put us to sleep. Not with judgment, but with understanding and compassion. What are those things that fall outside, so to speak, our spiritual practice? Money, NASDAQ, right? Driving, our own body, relationship to family, certain emotions that we have, our work. What is the places that we say, well, this I just go along with, I don't make into my practice? And what would it be like to bring the spirit of compassion to that place, to say, this will be a place of awakening too? Because awakening isn't some state that you get into, enlightened retirement. Oh, I got it. I gotta hold it. Can't have it change. Oh, it's so cool. You can't do it. You breathe in and you breathe out. And awakening is the same. And Master Suzuki Roshi said, what we're after is not enlightenment, but one moment of enlightenment after another. Now, there's something very good in this, because it also means that it's never too late. Never, never too late. Whether you're 25 or 85, it's not too late. The next moment, this moment, is the moment that enlightenment exists. It's possible. So Zen Master Huineng from ancient China said this. He said, as far as the Buddha nature is concerned, there is no difference between a sinner and a sage. One enlightened thought and one is a Buddha. One foolish thought and one is again an ordinary person. Like that, from one moment to another. So it's never too late. Any moment it's possible. It's like breathing. If we can be present with our breath, we can be present in this body, in this moment. It's so mysterious, this human life that we're given. I read a story that I found very moving in Rachel Raymond's books. The first of her book, Kitchen Table Wisdom, a few years ago. I'll read the story to you and then tell you another. And this is particularly an interesting story. She tells because she's trained as a physician and a scientist. For the last 10 years of his life, Tim's father had Alzheimer's disease. Despite the devoted care of his mother, Tim's mother, the father had slowly deteriorated until he became a sort of walking vegetable. He was unable to speak for years, was fed, clothed, and cared for as if he were a young child. Tim and his brother grew older. They would stay with their father for brief periods of time while their mother took care of the needs of the household. One Sunday, while she was out doing the shopping, the boys, then 15 and 17, were watching television. Their father sat nearby. Suddenly, he slumped forward and fell to the floor. Both sons realized immediately something was terribly wrong. His color was gray, his breath uneven and rasping. Frightened, the older boy told the younger brother, "Call 911. Before the younger boy could respond, a voice he had not heard in 10 years, a voice he could barely remember, spoke up and said, "Son, don't call 911. Tell your mother that I love her. Tell her that I'm all right." And then Tim's father lay there and he died. Tim, who is now a cardiologist, looked around the room of the group of doctors mesmerized by the story. He said, "Because he died unexpectedly at home, the law required we have an autopsy. My father's brain was almost entirely destroyed by Alzheimer's. For many years I've asked myself, where did those words come from?" Now it happens, and I hope that it's okay to tell this story because I didn't speak with them, I heard it secondhand, that members of this community who live in Woodacre, who are very lovely beings, Tim and Jane Unger, that Tim, his name happens to be related to someone in this story, had a brain tumor, and over these past months has gotten, the tumor had grown, and he got closer and closer to death, and became unable to speak any intelligible words now for quite a long time. He tried to speak, but all that came out were sounds that were unintelligible to anyone else. And it seemed like it would be a slow and difficult dying process. They had 2 children, but I guess it was about 2 weeks ago when he became much more seriously ill, and it became clear that he was going to die soon. And shortly before he died, even though he'd been unable to speak for a long time, his words came back. And he told his wife that he loved her dearly. He said his loving goodbyes to his children, and then he sang with them and told them that he would be all right and that he didn't want any extraordinary care, and then he died. Who are we really? Who do you think you are? This body? Certainly use this body, but if that's all that you think you are, you're in trouble. We are. There's some great spirit that brought you into this human life and that carries you through it. And to develop a wise understanding is to go inside and touch that place of your own true nature and awaken it. Remember it. Let it live through you. And then, when you're driving down the road and there's a rock in the middle of the road, you can even pull over and get out of your car and go back and move the rock out of the way so that the cars behind you don't run into it. Or you can bring that spirit of presence and compassion to your body, or to the conflict in your lives, or the bills that you have to pay, or the relationships that you're in, or your children or your parents when they're sick. And instead of being identified with the contracted, fearful, grasping, small sense of self, you can remember that in any moment, the path is here for you. Patience, compassion, freedom. You can breathe open, let go.